All right, we are into Exodus now. So, those of you that know that I am a fan of Genesis, I am actually really a fan of Genesis 1 to 11 pre-Abraham, or well, 1 to like 15 as you get into the covenants. Not that there's anything else wrong with the rest of Genesis, but there wasn't a lot of videos because it's a pretty straightforward story, walking through the patriarchs. So Exodus has a lot more sort of hyperlinks or links back to Genesis or things that are pretty critical for understanding the role of Jesus in the new covenant. A lot of symbols and sort of shadows of what is to be sort of ultimate in Jesus. So we might spend a bit more time in Exodus. And we are starting with chapter 1. So immediately it starts right off with a list of the same names of the tribes, right? Sort of provides continuity. Interestingly, it says these are the names of the sons of Israel who come to Egypt, right? And it's the literal sons of Israel, meaning Jacob, right? Jacob's name was Israel. So it gives those names. And then the next phrase, where it comes down in verse 7, it says, but the Israelites were fruitful. That phrase where it says the Israelites, that's the translation. It actually says, again, the sons of Israel. The sons of Israel were fruitful, increased, rapidly multiplied. So it sort of already extends this name Israel to the people as it's going on. So, and again, shades of Genesis, they were fruitful and they multiplied, which is the Genesis mandate, right? They became extremely numerous, which is what God had asked man to do when he created us. So basically, 100 years or a couple hundred years on from the original Pharaoh and Joseph, things start to go downhill, right? So there's a new Pharaoh. It doesn't say the couple hundred years, but based on timing and the timing, it's a very complicated rabbit hole. But it's roughly 400 or 430 years that they are in Egypt, depending on who you ask and which reference and how you count time and whatever else. But it says that in several other places. So it's not just a single Pharaoh. So you sort of move on, but basically you get down to verse, like say 14, and it says they made their lives bitter with difficult labor and brick and mortar. So that's a very common theme if you've ever done a Passover meal, that you have to eat bitter herbs in remembrance of how Egypt made their life bitter with work. So, and then basically what happens is the Pharaoh goes to the midwives and says, when you help the Hebrew woman give birth, then if it's a daughter, she may live, but if it's a son, you may kill him. So the midwives obviously say, oh, sure, fine, right? But in reality, they don't do it. So when Pharaoh brings them back up, they say, well, Hebrew women, they're not like Egyptian women. They're very vigorous and they give birth before we can even get there, right? So interestingly, this seems sort of a throwaway little story, whatever. This is part of a complex argument in Christianity from the point of view of this is one of the examples where it appears that these midwives basically lie to Pharaoh, and it says God was good to the midwives and people multiplied and became very numerous. So there is a long moral debate on lying, basically. There are two sides of that is very strict. There is no lying no matter what. So, the example everybody always uses is, during World War II, if you're hiding Jews beneath your floorboards and the soldiers come to your door, that you cannot lie even in that situation. And then there are other people that say, well, in that situation, you can lie. Because of this, there's a few other ones, the spies and Rahab and a few other situations. But it's a very complicated debate that is challenging. This is one of the interesting points that's brought up because these midwives clearly deceive at a minimum and pretty much outright lie. And it says God was good to them for that. So since the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Now, that continues on. And basically, clearly, these people are not in a good state. So what happens is we have a baby that's a Levite, and his name will eventually be Moses, but basically the mom, in order to save him, puts him in a basket and coated it with asphalt and pitch right here. And basically, what that word is, that basket, is actually an ark. So she puts Moses, is Moses' mother. You find this out later, but it's Moses' mother, puts him in an ark, coats it with asphalt and pitch, just as Noah did. And then, Noah was saved and basically went on to father all of the people of the world. So in this situation, we've got Moses saved, and he is going to rescue God's people. So again, just some of those overtones of Genesis. And he comes down, you hear the story. I won't go through all of it. But he ends up being called Moses, and he gets adopted into the Pharaoh's family. So it was the princess comes down, sees him, adopts him into the family. So what happens is he goes out one day. I drew him out of the water, and she named him Moses. He goes out one day, sees an Egyptian striking a Hebrew, look around, seeing no one, he struck the Egyptian dead and hid him in the sand. So this Egyptian was presumably being quite cruel to a Hebrew, and Moses was not impressed and ended up killing him. Next day, he went out and saw two Hebrews fighting, right? You sort of say, fine, in between. He asked the one in the wrong, why are you attacking? And the person says, who made you commander over us? Are you planning to kill me like the Egyptian? So then Moses realizes, hey, wait a second, I guess there were more people around than I thought. Which, at a minimum, you'd say there has to be at least one, because he was attacking an Israelite. So, but that detail is not given. But either way, Pharaoh hears about it, tries to kill Moses. So Moses runs, right? Some interesting pieces of this little story. So Moses became afraid, and he ran away. And where he comes to is Midian. So interesting thing, the Midians are actually descendants of Abraham. So when in Genesis 25, when Sarah dies, Abraham remarries and has a number of sons beyond Isaac. And the Midianites come from there. But these Midianites, they descend from Abraham. So they should know God. They should be circumcised. And that actually comes into the story later. So in a very interesting story, we'll get there, but with Moses' wife and circumcision. So, but they are familiar with that. So they are followers of Yahweh. And what happens is he meets this woman, and this woman brings him back to Ruel. So Moses is basically on the run, runs into the desert for the most part, and who he meets is Ruel. El, as we just mentioned before, is the word for God. So that's Elohim, is El, and then Ru is friend. So he meets a friend of God who is a priest. And this priest sort of basically rescues him or adopts him into his family. He marries his daughter after meeting her at the well, as Isaac and Jacob both did. And he sort of marries Zipporah and sort of grows into that family. So it finishes the chapter with the Israelites still in Egypt and crying out, groaning because of their difficult labor. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God saw the Israelites, and God knew, which is a very interesting sort of cliffhanger end of a sentence, right? God knew. So what did he know? Well, you can sort of understand from before this, but it continues on after this. He knows of their suffering, right? So he saw the Israelites, and he knew what was going on. So from there, what happens is, go back to the top, you get to Exodus 3. And basically, if this throws you off at all, Jethro is, there's a couple interpretations. Most people think it's basically like a last name, a family sort of name. So that Ruel and Jethro are just the two names of him. There are some people that believe, I think Jethro is a title, but it's sort of beside the point. It's the same person. So Ruel and Jethro are the same person as you go through. So he's shepherding the flock, and it says obviously his father-in-law Jethro. So you can understand right there, the priest of Midian. So clearly he means the same person. So Ruel and Jethro are the same person, however you want to parse that. So Moses goes to a place called Horeb, and basically, again, some of this language gets a little challenging. There's still a lot of discussion and debate about Sinai, but Horeb and Sinai are equated in several places in the Bible. So whether that means there is a mountain that is called Horeb and Sinai, or whether there is a region called Horeb that's a little bit bigger, that has a mountain in it called Sinai, there is some discussion and debate. But again, both of those debates are interesting scholarly from the point of practically reading the Bible. They don't have a whole bunch of importance. Horeb and Sinai are the same thing, right? So Moses comes to Sinai, the mountain of God, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire within a bush. And as Moses looked, he saw that the bush was on fire, but was not consumed. So Moses thought, I must go over and look at this remarkable sight. Why isn't the bush burning up? So the angel of the Lord appears. And then when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called out to him from the bush, Moses, Moses, here I am. So there's lots of interesting discussion and literature on the angel of the Lord. Clearly, it equates the angel of the Lord. Either both the angel of the Lord appears as flame and God is also in the bush, or it equates the two, puts them together, and that's quite often where it actually swaps back and forth in language between the angel of the Lord and God. Often the angel of the Lord actually appears as a person, so we've already seen that numerous times in Genesis, where the angel of the Lord appeared to Abraham, and they sit and have a conversation, and then the language goes back and forth between God and the angel of the Lord. So that was actually something right up until the Second Temple, which is when Jesus arrived. It was a normal discussion in rabbinic literature to talk about the sort of two gods theory, right? The angel of the Lord and God appear at the same time, and they appear to be independent entities, but at the same time, they're referenced as the same person. So they already had discussions about this Godhead idea with at least two, and obviously it mentions the Spirit quite often, and even links that in. So they already had this fairly developed idea of a Godhead, and what happened is, as Christianity started to take off, they ended up squashing that idea very quickly because it was too Christian. So they eliminated any mention of that and got uptight about it. So there is no more mention from after, the Second Temple. So sort of from 200 AD on, you don't really see that discussion anymore in rabbinic literature. But before that, it was pretty normal in the Old Testament to talk about sort of a Godhead and have that discussion. Which was interesting. So, Lord calls out, Moses, Moses, and he answers, here I am. So he has a conversation with the burning bush, which is interesting. What you're going to see here is this whole section, sort of verse 7, 8, 9, this whole area. The Lord said, I've observed the misery of my people in Egypt. And it goes on, I've come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and bring them to a new land. So this is, you don't necessarily realize it here, but this is a stark contrast that's going to go on, and it's going to go on right through the plagues and the rescue from Egypt, is that Egypt has a pantheon of gods that are responsible for all different things, right? And what God is laying out here is he's saying, like, Yahweh is different. Yahweh is the God of your people, and he is the true God. And I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to rescue you. And there's many references as we get into the plagues of him saying, look, this could have been easier, but I'm using this as an example to show you that Yahweh is the true God, that he is the one God that is going to rescue you with his strong arm, which is basically, the strong arm is sort of in the face of the Pharaoh, and we'll talk about that as we keep going. So, but this sort of paragraph here is laying out the contrast, saying, you're going to be my people, I'm going to be your God, which is very, very different from that whole ancient Near East sort of idea that's going on, right? So you get down to the exciting part down here, verse 13 or so, and he starts talking to the bush, right? And then Moses asks God, if I go to the Israelites and say this to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What should I tell them? So one, I would say, like, there's some discussion of this. Does Moses even really know God? Is this just a question to say, what should I tell them? But it's also a little bit of he wasn't actually raised as a Hebrew. So this is sort of a semi-new thing. Obviously, the Midianites did know Yahweh. His father-in-law was a priest of Yahweh, and they were a circumcised people. So he does know of them, but there is a little bit of an honesty, I don't know. You're asking someone who wasn't even raised as, even though he was a Hebrew, he was not raised that way. So it's a bit of an interesting thing. And of course, God replies, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. So everybody has probably heard this expression, whatever else. There are a couple of meanings. This translation of I am has sent me to you. The translating from ancient Hebrew is a little bit tricky. There's only consonants, right, that are used. And at times the tenses and the verbs and different pieces and it can also mean, because there's only consonants, it's actually a pretty limited number of letters. So sometimes the words, it could have multiple meanings. And even in English that happens, where you've got multiple meanings, right? So the I am has several potential meanings, and it doesn't have to be, if it's this one, then it's not this one or something else. Much of the Bible, if you haven't noticed, they are happy to have multiple meanings, and you can actually think on them. So one meaning is presence, where it says, I am has sent me to you. It could mean that basically, I am with you. That I am, meaning that the presence of God is there, and he is sending me to you. Second one is sort of a causational. That verb can be causation, meaning I am the one who causes to be. So it's a to be is sort of the verb. So I am is the present tense of that be, right? But it could be a causational. I am the one who causes to be has sent me to you. And the third one is sort of the future tense. Sometimes you'll hear it translated, I will be who I will be, which is actually captured pretty well with the I am in English, right? Like, are you sort of saying I am? And clearly it's sort of, he is now, but he is in the future as well. He's going to be forever. So that aspect of it is actually captured pretty well in English. So can be any and all of those, and I'm happy thinking it can be intentionally blending all of those. So, but basically what I am is the first person version of Yahweh. So this right here, the Lord, this is Yahweh. That's every time you see in your Old Testament translation, typically it's a capital L with a slightly smaller O-R-D, but all uppercase. That Lord is Yahweh. And it's in the Old Testament, Y-H-W-H, Yahweh, only consonants, right? So the I am is basically the first person version of it. So it's God saying it, whereas the Lord, is Yahweh, is the third person. That's how we would call him. So when it says, I am sent me to you, he's sort of using the first person saying, I am the God that is coming to you. Whereas Lord, Yahweh, is the third person version of that. So if you get into the names or worry about those things, eventually, closer to the time of Jesus, Second Temple, the Hebrews, Israelites, Jews, whatever you want to call them, came up with the idea that they shouldn't be saying Yahweh out loud. So that was not something that happened traditionally. There's no evidence of that in the Old Testament. But after the sort of intertestamental period, they started to say, well, we really shouldn't be saying that. So they started saying Adonai, which is Lord, basically, right? So they use the word Adonai instead of saying, so they call him Lord instead of using the Yahweh. Sometimes you'll see G apostrophe D, so you don't actually say the God or don't write the God, and you say Adonai. in its place. So, and then for those of you that like the name Jehovah or like that address, that only came about well after, at least 1,000 years after Jesus. Potentially, the first recorded is actually 1500 AD. So, sort of late Middle Ages was the first recorded Jehovah. And basically, what that is it takes the YHWH consonants and it puts the vowels from Adonai in it, because the original Hebrew didn't have the vowels, so you had to add them in when you were speaking. So you add in the Adonai vowels into the YHWH, and you get Yehovah. And that's in English, basically, it's moved to Jehovah. So that's where Jehovah comes from. That's a later addition, if you want to. Not that it's a bad name to use, but I'm just, if you're wondering where the etymology of all of these words came from, that is it. So I am is the first person version, and Yahweh is the third person version for the Lord, which is used, the personal God. So whenever you see God right here, this capital G God is Elohim. That's a more generic term for spiritual being. So when it says God replied to Moses, that's El or Elohim as a God. And whenever it says Lord, that's Yahweh. That's the specific Lord of the Israel, of the Hebrew people. So this is my name forever and ever, should be remembered in every generation. So, and then it goes on and sort of tells the story again. It says that go to the elders. So the elders are already in place, which is not a surprise for a sort of a populous people. They're going to have that. So when it later in it's not Exodus, I think it might even be later, but at some point God will say appoint elders later. So if you're curious, it's a different word. These are actual elders. The later word that's usually translated elders is really more judge. So we'll get there when we get there. So he basically, God tells Moses, go to Pharaoh, tell him you need a 3-day vacation so that you can go worship. And that this will be a sign to you that you will come back to Sinai and worship here. But verse 19, however, I know the king of Egypt will not allow you, even under force from a strong hand. So again, that's sort of a jab at Pharaoh. Pharaoh's meant to be the strong arm. But when I stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles, he will let you go. Not only that, you will not go empty-handed. You will plunder the Egyptians on your way out the door. So that is quite a promise, isn't it? So sorry, that's a bit of a long video, but that is 3 chapters and pretty important chapters as you're going through of the Exodus. So I hope you are blessed reading this. Exodus is a lot of fun, and I hope you continue diligently reading and working your way through it. God bless.